All right, let's get started here. So getting into our agenda, I'm going to go real quickly through our portfolio, the Unified Workflow portfolio, and then I'm going to touch on the what's new with Prinergy 7 and other new information. I'm going to go through a demonstration of a few key components of the Prinergy 7 workflow and other solution, and then we'll get into the Q&A. All right, let's talk about our portfolio. Coming back, Prinergy Workflow is the world's leading production workflow solution, and what we've done is expanded our intelligent automation and worked at reducing costs with some of the new features that we're bringing out with Prinergy 7. So we're excited about them and certainly hope you will see the fruits of our labor here. We also are going to talk a little bit about preps, so continuing preps with its capabilities, reducing turnaround times, creating error-free impositions, and certainly giving you new tools to work with as you build those impositions. Color flow, we're going to talk about color flow. Color flow is also included with Prinergy 7, and it's got some bug fixes. Again, the key driver with color flow is we're talking about your color relationship management, or CRM solution. And I think that is certainly important when we deal with multiple devices and wanting to have that consistency of color across those devices. And then InSite. InSite, our 24/7 portal to Prinergy Workflow. And while I can tout and talk about InSite here, I just want to skip to the next slide real quick so I can hear some hoo-hoos. Even though you're on mute, I can't hear you. But InSite 7 will be released shortly, and it will be 100% Java-free. So we will have an HTML5 Smart Review, a whole new interface with the Smart Review, new system diagnostics, and again, 100% Java-free. And look, yeah, thank you. I get a woohoo.
Actually, there was a little bit of that in the chat, Patrick.
Excellent. Great to hear. The one key component I want you to be aware of, look for announcements where we're going to have similar web access to this, led by Brenda Power, and she's going to be presenting the new InSite Prepress Portal 7 Smart Review. So look for that in your inbox. All right. So let's start talking about what's new with Prinergy Workflow 7. So the first feature that we're very excited about is a new integration tool. And what we have done is worked with Callas. And Callas is one of the leading preflight technologies out there. And we have integrated their solution into Prinergy. And so what that means for you is new capabilities, new profile based on the latest industry standards and ICCs, everything that you can think of, and then having the flexibility to go in and create your own. So Preflight Plus is what we're calling it. If you have an advanced pre-flight license already with Prinergy, you get this. So there's not an upgrade or anything associated with that. You have advanced pre-flight licensing, you get Preflight Plus. And when I go into more details, I'll talk about what that will mean for you. But it's very exciting that now you have this toolbox, a PDF toolbox, that's Callas's product name, but the integration into Prinergy, that's the important part and how you're going to be able to utilize that. Additionally, we have some layered PDF versioning enhancements. Now, for those of you that may not be familiar with a layered PDF versioning, this is a capability that allows you to maintain the layers of a PDF file, and whether you're doing that to control common elements and individual elements that would relate to, such as catalog work or regional work, languaging. It just allows you to control how those layers would be related to a common graphic, page, or other elements. What we've done is expanded the capabilities of the layered versioning license, and we're allowing you to have more control over those files, better error detection, such as finding elements that are in the wrong place, as well as how those layers can be mapped. And I think this is an important aspect, so taking back a step to an automation to allow you to take some of those processes and put it into a repeatable process similar to the APA function, or automatic page assignment. So some of those advantages, again, coming full circle, giving you less manual checks and more time savings. Now, Prinergy Workflow 7 also includes some digital enhancements. We've put in some better, more control functions for certain digital and conventional presses. And so we have expanded the range of the KODAK and third-party digital presses we work with. And the advantage there is you'll see some announcements to come down the road with who those third parties are and how you can take advantage of that within Prinergy Workflow 7. There's also a new PREPS. PREPS 713 will be shipped with Prinergy 7, or is being shipped in the early production phase right now with Prinergy 7. Some of the features that go with PREPS 713, you have a multi-signature view, you have new independent page capabilities, and new duplicate sheet options, and more. Now you'll notice on this slide deck I also mentioned a 714 for PREPS. 714 includes everything that 713 has, but this is targeted for our PREPS user base that has historically been working with this infernal device called a dongle. PREPS 714 is now dongle-less. There's no longer a hardware key associated, and you can license it through the software. So maybe not as exciting as InSite Prepress Portal being 100% Java-free, but there's a little woohoo there for us that it's going to be dongle-less. And look for that technology to make its way into other unified workflow products. Pandora is already dongle-less as well, Pandora 4, and then we expect that Prinergy will be reaching a dongle-less state in the coming roadmap. So again, included with Prinergy Workflow 7. What else is with Prinergy Workflow 7? Well, there is a new ColorFlow 212. We have support, again, I mentioned earlier, from digital devices. We have support for the new Konica Minolta KM1. We have some new Maxtone SX V2 support. So high resolution, we're talking 4800 resolution. We have new rehost tools. We also are supporting Windows 2012 tertiary devices, and lots of bug fixes and new training files. Okay. So let's get into an actual product demonstration. I picked a few items to demonstrate. There is more, obviously, in some of the new features here, but I wanted to highlight some of the key items as I referenced earlier, such as Preflight Plus, layered versioning, and then some PREPS. So that's my demo agenda. We're going to go through and talk about Preflight Plus, some layered PDF versioning error detection capabilities. Then we'll go into PREPS. I'll talk about the multi-signature view and some of the new independent page functions that we have. All right. And I put a note here just so for everyone's benefit. if there's ever a question or reference material, always go to partnerplace.kodak.com and look for the latest release notes. All right, so I'm going to switch gears now and leave the PowerPoint. And we're going to actually start talking about Preflight Plus. So for that discussion, I'm actually going to go into Workshop. And in Workshop, I am going to select a job that I've already built. And the goal of this demonstration is really to highlight the capabilities, the integration capabilities that we have with the Preflight Plus or Callas PDF toolbox. Now, while I'm bringing Workshop up, I'm going to do a quick little refresh here. And hopefully you can see on screen, through the installer, when you use your Prinergy Workshop installer, there is now a checkbox option in there to include what we call Preflight Plus and the Callas PDF toolbox. So that has been installed locally on my computer. And because that has been installed, you'll see how that integration is going to take place from within Workshop. So from within Workshop, I can go into my Tools menu. And within the Tools menu, you'll notice that I now have a Preflight Plus Profile Manager. Now, the key here is Profile Manager. The integration that we have with the Callas solution is working with the profiles. Now, what I'm going to do is launch this, and it's going to bring up the Callas environment, which I had already running. Now, a couple things to point out here, just as the screen is here, that we're not licensing the product at this particular phase. If you want to use the Callas PDF toolbox, you would need to work with Callas to see about getting a licensing. So you can see here I can go in and do a trial license, but that doesn't mean you can't work with it. You can. You can actually still work with it and work with the profiles. So from here, under my tools, I'm going to launch my profiles, and I get full access to all of the latest industry standards that are out there, including the Ghent Workgroup 2012 standard, which we were just recently certified on. So Prinergy 7, with the inclusion of the Callas PDF toolbox, because it has the profile already here, has been now certified with the GWG 2012 standard. Now, there's a lot of capabilities here with the Callas PDF toolbox, and this really is not a demonstration of the tool set that you have with the PDF toolbox. That's something that you would work with Callas to go possibly get training or see what resources are available for that. What I'm focusing on here is the integration, how this works within the Prinergy environment. Now, I do have several capabilities here to create new, edit, go through some duplication processes. One is I'm going to actually come in and I've created a profile, and I'm just going to open that up. And again, this is not a presentation of how to utilize Callas so much as highlighting that this is a profile that I have gone in and created within the Callas environment, and then how that is integrated or integral to the new toolkit that we have with Prinergy. So I have actually gone in this particular case, created a profile called Spot Color Detection. And through that, and through using the mechanisms that are built into the Callas toolkit, I have defined that I want to have some capability that if my page uses a spot color, identify that for me. Very simple, but it's from the demonstration purposes of how this works. Okay? Now, for this, I'm not making any changes really. I just want to highlight that with that, I have the ability to, again, come in and now export that profile. And in doing that export profile, I'm going to be able to define where that's going to land. Now, I know it seems like I'm doing things that are happening on the side, and that is simply for the benefit of this recording. But I can then take that profile and place that profile on the Prinergy system, in this case my Araxi volume, and based on an organizational structure, I have this actually going into a customized profile folder. This is key for the integration. So now this file is available for me on the Prinergy side to go through and utilize. So let me now go into a job, and I want to talk about utilization of that preflight. So for here, what I'm going to do is go into a refine process, my process template editor, and in my refine group, I've already created a refine that has a preflight process template. I'll take a moment here to discuss some of the options. Now, within the PDF preflight, first and foremost, I want to mention for those of you that are using the advanced preflight capability, that is still maintained here. So you see I do have the advanced preflight capability. And all the tool set that is associated with advanced preflight is still available for you. Now, I do need to mention a caveat here. InSite Prepress Portal, as we're coming out with version 7, again, woohoo, Java free. InSite Prepress 7, though, does not have the integration yet with the same preflight technology, the Callas PDF toolbox. So they're still going to be utilizing the advanced preflight tool set. So in this time period, there's going to be a little bit of a transition. Okay? But the new Preflight Plus is now available. It has its own UI within the Refine Process template. And from here, I can go about selecting the profile that I had defined within Callas. And I'll talk about some of those features in a second. The one item I want to highlight, and this I think is going to be a tremendous component for everyone, is it's JTP-based. So now you have the opportunity that if you have a large volume of pages that you find you hit a bottleneck because you're going through a pre-flight process, you can add additional JTPs. Naturally, I think there's a licensing charge with that. But at that point in time, you could expand to do load balancing if you're using a pool capability. All right. Moving a little bit further down, you'll notice that the pre-flight options, the way that it's defined with Preflight Plus, is we actually have two subsets of information. So I have a Run Preflight Plus on original file, and then I have a Run Preflight Plus on normalized files. So you have a pre and post. And the advantage here is depending on how you define that Callas profile, you can take advantage of the technologies that Callas offers to actually not only identify the issues pre, but then post, you can have fix and go in and make adjustments to those files. And you actually have the ability to have different profiles for the pre that you would for the post. So that is a unique capability that we can take advantage of here with the Preflight Plus. You're also generating a report. You choose how you want that report to be defined, whether it's PDF, XML, or text. And then you have an ability to define where that report lands if you wanted to add some additional processes to what happens with that file. All right? So I've gone in and predefined my refined process template to use my spot color detection and also to do the pre and post with that same file. Now I'm going to process, oops, let's close that, don't save. I'm going to actually process this file here, go through my refine. I created a simple group under my refine structure simply for demonstration purposes, and there might be the possibility that you have multiple different types of pre-flight profiles. So here I'm kicking off the process. Now as part of the process, I'm going to highlight in the comments here the two things that I mentioned that were in the refined process template, and that is that pre and post. So we'll see here in a second, you'll notice I have the input pre-flight and then the normalized pre-flight. And as well, in the comments, you can see the execution of those two components and what profile was being utilized. So again, highlighting the integration as well as the advantages that we have now with Preflight Plus to have that pre and post. With the results of this file, I'm going to now come in and highlight the report view. So the report view, I have two different segments for that. Again, that pre and post capability, where I can look at the report for the input and I can look at the report for the refined file. So I'm just going to open up the input. You'll see that it uses spot color and it's highlighting that. Let me go to my comments. And with respect to the comments, I can click on that and it takes me to those areas of concern that were highlighted based on my pre-flight profile. Okay, this was the input. Now, I'm going to go back into Workshop, into my job, and I'm going to open the refined view. And you'll notice now the significance here says no problems were found. Now, I should have been clear, I did change in my refined profile that I had it convert spot to process. That was the Prinergy refined process that I had done. I skipped that, I'm sorry. But as you can see, now no problems were found because that conversion had been taken place. So I have a difference between that input that's showing me the two areas of concern, in this case spot colors, and then in this case the quote-unquote fix, which I actually used Prinergy to do, and that was to convert it to process, and no errors were found. So I know it's a simple little process that I went through on this, but it certainly does highlight the fact that we have these new expanded capabilities with the Preflight Plus or Callas PDF toolbox. And there's some great advantages you're going to be able to work with this toolkit. All right. So let me close that. Okay. So again, highlighting the integration that we have there with Preflight Plus and the Callas PDF toolbox. All right. Now, I'm going to go in and talk for a second about a new capability that we have with our layered versioning. And for those of you that might not have layered versioning, I'd like you to consider that some of these new features that we have added with layered versioning could expand a discussion or might have a use case in your environment that you hadn't considered before. One such consideration is looking at the possibility that when you work with a PDF file today, just in general practice, the refine process flattens those layers. And by using LPV, you don't have that. So certainly some advantages you can look at here. So what I'm going to do here is kind of highlight a process that you can go through with one of the new functions, one of the new error detection functions that we have within our layered versioning. And what I'm actually going to do is highlight the old way and then show the new way. So for this example here, what I'm going to do is I have in this environment, I have layered versioning enabled. So again, for those that might not have seen what a layered versioning UI looks like, I have new tabs. I have a version plan, version pages, and then from that, we generate a layered file. Okay? In this particular case, I have a layered file that I'm going to introduce that was created by my colleague, James Robson. And in that layered versioning file, as a hockey fan, we have some differences. And we want to highlight what those differences are going to be. So for this, I'm going to actually go through a generate process. And I'm going to actually go through an edit of the dialog here, simply just to show you what the standard choices have been before. Now, in this particular case, I have where it's going to warn if there's common object differences, and then how is it going to react as those differences are found between the different layers. This, again, as I'm mentioning here, is the old process in which we did things. So I'm going to run this, let it process, and it's developed a warning for me. And in my comments, I can see the warnings that are happening on the respective pages. Now, I'm going to open this file in Acrobat, and as you can see, in maintaining the different layers, I have a common layer, and then I have an error layer. But the error layer isn't necessarily helping me identify. I see something that's wrong, but of the two objects, which is right and which is wrong? So it's really not exactly evident to me on that. So we realize that that could be potentially a problem, and unless somebody really is familiar with knowing how these different items could work, we've gone in and created a new use case, where you can change how we identify those objects that are incorrect. So I'm going to leave this result open, and I'm going to go back into my job, and I'm going to come in and take the second process. It's actually the same files, but I've generated it in a different manner. But I'm going to go through that generate process one more time and change the features and error detection. So in this particular case here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell it to fail. And the interesting thing here is it fails in such a way that I can see that failure, but it's just to that page, not failing the entire component. And based on how I want to manipulate those differences, in this case, I want to copy them, and I want to mark those with a red X. So this allows me now to go in and define that relationship to that error. Now I'm going to initiate and kick off that process. And as you can see, as it goes through and comments, it's got an error. It's actually telling me the failure was on what page. Close this. And you can see in the listing of the generated of that imposition solution, I have success on 2 of the pages and then the fail identified. Whereas in the previous, you just see I've got some alerts, warnings. Now, I'm going to open this file. And actually, close that one. Let's open. And now, I should see, specifically, I've got my comment. I'll turn the comment off. But now I can see with a red X what the object is that is causing my issue. Got a red X across it, clearly identifying the graphic that is out of sorts. So this is a very compelling new capability, and it can be used in conjunction with the preflighting, and as well, now I can still actually process the objects that were good. So my Edmonton and Vancouver selections or layers could continue to process, and I can continue to work that job through, waiting on possibly receiving new information from my customer to update the respective file. So that is a new feature that we have with our layered versioning. There are additional features, and again, I mentioned earlier the release notes. Please reference the release notes for more details on those other new layered versioning enhancements. All right. So that covers the Prinergy items that I was going to demonstrate in this particular WebEx, but let me now talk for a minute about the preps features that we've added. So for those of you that are still in the preps 5 era, and again, we appreciate you using preps, fantastic imposition program, but you may not have made the step forward because you felt that there were certain features that you had in preps 5 that haven't quite made it into preps 6 or greater, 6 or 7. So what I'd like to introduce you to is what we call our new multi-signature view state. Now, historically, our preps 5 users, and earlier you had a template editor view, and in that template editor view, you had the ability to see front and back, or if you're in a multi-web environment, you get to see the multi-sheets of that signature. When we move to preps 6 and greater, because there is no longer a true template editor mode, everything is built within the job context, we didn't have that template editing capability until now. So what I'm going to introduce you to here, and I'm kind of doing it old school, I'm going to go in and create an imposition like I had done previously. And in that, I'm going to save the number of pages horizontally and vertically and add my layout. This is how preps 6 and 7 has historically worked. But now, in my top toolbar, I have a choice here. I can click on my multi-signature view, and that now lets me see both the front and back form at the same time. So if I'm working in that traditional preps template editing mode, I now have the ability to see the fronts and backs and make adjustments as necessary. And it not only extends from a sheet perspective that we're talking about, a single sheet offset environment, but it also extends into a multi-web environment. And for that, I'm going to kind of come in here and duplicate as web, get my right click, duplicate as web, and now you can see I have my web 1 top and bottom respectively, and my web 2 top and bottom. And all the same functionality, such as using my numbering tool, allows me to go through and make those numbering changes as I need them. So this is a really great new feature for those of you that are working with a multi-sheet environment or prefer working in that front-back template edit view. We got a lot of feedback from our PREPS 5 user base that was struggling with the migration forward, and this was one of the key items that they were looking for, so we were able to address that with this version of PREPS. All right. Now another new feature here, and I'm going to create a new job for PREPS, is our independent page handling. Now historically with PREPS 6 and 7, we didn't actually have a true independent page capability. You could come in and create an independent page, but it was more of a placeholder. You defined the placeholder and the attributes, and then you used it. With 7.1.3, we now actually have an independent page menu, just like you had with PREPS 5, and it gives you the same features that you had with PREPS 5, where you can come in and define what that independent page is, use your additional settings, and define that. The other significant feature with this is you can see here that it is marked visually different than we would have if we were looking at a standard imposition. So just to draw that comparison, I'm going to pull in a fold pattern and put that alongside. So here is a imposition-based solution, and here is my independent page side by side. So visually you can see the differences between those. And if you're working with what I call a migrated PREPS template from PREPS 5 or earlier into 6 or 7, you're expected to see the same results. It's going to respect that independent page, give you the visual for it, and then you have your imposition pages viewed differently. Okay? This is what I call the standard capability of an independent page that you had from PREPS 5. Now, moving forward, we added new enhancements with independent page, and some of those enhancements are really unique. There is a new tool set here for add independent page. Just in general, clicking it is similar to the 17 by 11 page you saw me add earlier. What I'm going to highlight a little bit differently is I'm going to take this fold pattern and using my open arrow tool, select a page or pages, and I'm now going to convert that. So I have a drop down that's allowing me to convert that independent page, whether it's the front or the back or both pages. And for this, I'm just going to do both. And you'll see that now I have taken that identity of what that original page was and converted it on the imposition. Okay. Again, the independent page is independent of all the attributes of an imposed page. So if I needed to define bleeds or shingling or bottling, any of the features that you would have to do that normally you would do collectively for one imposition, now for the independent page, it's entirely independent. Okay. Now there are some additional capabilities that we have added with PREPS, and again, check the release notes for further details. One particular item that I want to highlight is we now have a new duplicating sheet menu. Historically, you duplicated a sheet, it would just add it to the next line item below. It would add like the column below. But now I have the ability to define that relationship where the duplication is going to go before or after. If I'm in a really long press run, I can then choose where that's going to land. So this is, again, a significant new capability. All right. Well, that highlights the new features that we have with PREPS 713 and 714. Again, the release notes, if there's more detail you want to get into, you can certainly look to that. I'm going to pop back to the PowerPoint here, show that we discussed the preflight plus integration, talked about one new capability that we have with the LPV error detection, went through the multi-signature view state that we have in PREP 713, and then I talked about some of the new independent pages that we have. So this brings us to the Q&A portion, and I'd ask at this point in time, Barb, if we have questions to start. We'll go through those. So Barb, any questions? So currently it is tertiary. The next rev that we're coming out with Prinergy will be Windows 2012 for the primary. So primary and secondary, excuse me. Tertiary only now, and then Windows 2012 by end of year. I am not familiar with that. Are we talking an MIS solution, or are we talking about OneVision? Not familiar with that. Maybe let's take that question offline and certainly address that.
It's a preflight solution.
Oh, okay. So with respect to that, then no, we've integrated with Callas directly on that. So if you want to use a third-party solution such as InFocus or the solution you just mentioned, then that would be through the current practice that you're using. So the Preflight Plus module is available as a license on its own accord, yes. Again, if you had the advanced pre-flight license before, you would be able to utilize that in the new capability with Preflight Plus. Now, I was hearing broken talk on that. I think you also mentioned is a PREPS license separate? The PREPS licensing you get one PREPS license with every Prinergy solution. And if you need additional PREPS licenses, that is something that you can purchase as well. Okay. So not sure what term you're referring to hosting, like if we're talking cloud, no. If we're talking virtualization, like a solution that you would have virtual environments, we've been doing virtual environments for some time. We support the ESX, the VMware ESX side of things. And when we go to Windows 2012, which again I mentioned will be end of year, the expectation is we'll do the Hyper-V at that point in time as well. So the license with Callas is to utilize the full breadth of the Callas PDF toolbox. So there are some great tools that Callas has built into the product of their own, and you can utilize those. Whereas what I was showing was the integration and going in and using existing profiles or creating a custom profile to build in. James, if you're on the line, do you want to mention what some of the additional capabilities with the Callas PDF toolbox would offer somebody that would certainly be advantageous to them?
Sure. They have some basic imposition functions that you could perform. If you were to look at the Callas toolbox, there's a bunch of widgets in something called a switchboard. So there's the basic imposition. You could also view layers. You could run your pre-flight profiles right in the toolbox if you wanted to maybe experiment with profiles before bringing them into Prinergy. So yeah, you could get a license from Callas to do those types of things. Without the license, as you said, you can basically edit the profiles and create new ones and export those to Prinergy.
So if you have the advanced pre-flight license today, they're standard. So you get everything that I've shown with that integration capability. If you don't have the advanced pre-flight license within your Prinergy solution right now, then it would be something that you would need to look into purchasing through your sales or inside sales. And the other additional component is, and I mentioned this too, is now it's JTP based. And the advantage that you have with that is if you have already that existing advanced pre-flight, great, you're in. You've got one JTP, you're going to be able to use it. But if you find that pre-flighting pages is a bottleneck in your workflow, now you have the capability of adding additional JTPs to resolve some of that. So the answer to that is yes, but you would actually go to the 714. You would be working with the download from Partner Place. However, I do want to caution that the difference, if you're talking about you're using Prinergy, say 6 something, the PREPS license that is running under the hood of Prinergy, the PREPS version there, will be different than the application. Now, in reality, the only difference that we have with the application is the new view states and the new template editing capability, so that's not going to affect you too much. But I don't want everyone to get into the habit of being out of sync with the workshop version that Prinergy is offering. But in this particular case, it's okay. So yes. Is Workspace being phased out? No, Workspace is still with Prinergy 7. I just didn't highlight that discussion in this item because there's nothing new in the Workspace environment for this release. Yes, there are, and specifically to go along with the new features that we have here with the Preflight Plus capability and LPV, we have added new capabilities within those respective data models for RBA. But anything outside of that, no. Dongle-less is just a single workstation license. It's not floating license. Floating license is what Prinergy does. So with Prinergy, you have 5 seats of preps. So that means 5 computers can check out a license at a time, and you check availability. The dongle-less solution is tied to the computer, and just like a dongle was tied to the computer, and you license it based on that computer at that moment in time. There is a capability that you can release the license from that computer and then move it just like you could move the physical USB dongle, but we don't anticipate people doing much of that, but that is available as well. Prinergy 7 2008 server, or yes? Pre-jobs and jobs. Oh, that's an interesting question. We don't have that on our roadmap to bring them necessarily together. Whoever asked that question, I'd like to find out the reason why. So please send me an email on that.
Joanna?
Next couple weeks, actually.
Yeah.
Out in a couple weeks. Yep,
yeah.
Within the month. So stay tuned.
Stay tuned.
Okay.
For the latest and greatest, follow us on our Facebook page. If you are on Facebook, you don't even have to be, active on Facebook. You can just search for Prinergy, and that will take you to our Facebook page, and all the latest breaking news is there. Also, you can follow us on Twitter, and again, search for Prinergy, and you'll find our Twitter feed. And we're also on LinkedIn where press releases are announced, and of course our website. So there's a number of different ways to stay up to date with all the latest news.
Okay, great. Thank you.
And that, actually, I think it is May 20th, if I'm not mistaken. So mark your calendars. I'm going to hold that thunder for Brenda when she does her presentation. I know she's on the line probably snickering right now, me saying that. But the key feature that I want to come back to is it's a whole new Smart Review user interface, Java-free. So I think that was our final leg of the stool, if you want to call it that, to get Java out of IPPP. So it's gone. So yeah, but I'll leave Brenda to that in a few weeks. 6.1, if I'm not mistaken. Brenda, you can answer that one for me.
Okay. All right. 6.1.1.
6.1.1, yeah.
Okay. And a note from Brenda, can you mention that preflight Plus is not supported with Printg 7?
Yes, and to reiterate that again, the advanced pre-flight mechanism will be continuing to use with InSite, and we have that gap that InSite will then incorporate the PDF toolbox in a later release. So the oldest, as you saw in the presentation here, I've been doing 10.10.3. We tend to go back 2 versions, so that would be a 10.8. Anything beyond that, we do not test. Yeah, I'll address that with respect to, so the analyze is the pre-component or not just the pre-component, but analyze allows Callas to go through and find the issues that you determine what they are and how you want to react, and then the fix component allows you to go in and make those adjustments based on the logic of what you're trying to achieve. For an actual demonstration of that, I would work with Callas on that. I don't want to misrepresent that. Yes. If you're talking about the dongle-less Prep 714, yeah, they're available from that. Preps is preps. You go into preps and do what you need to do and save out a JDF. Don't understand the context of that question other than you need a license of preps to be on a workstation by workstation basis to ensure that you have the entitlement. If you're running it off of Prinergy, you get a certain number of seats that you've purchased, like 5 or 10. If you're working with a dongle environment, typically that dongle environment is a one-to-one relationship with that workstation. The dongle-less continues that. You cannot print a mock-up the way you did in Preps 5. I say cannot. There is a job layout report capability that you have with Prep 6 and now with 7. And that job layout report gives you all the specifics of the job, which does include the impositions as well as marks that are on that impositions. So it's similar but different. Yes.
Okay.
You always can, yes. If you're talking about floating license from Prinergy, you're going to be working with Prep 713. The only difference between 713 and 714 is the dongle-less environment. So I would prefer that you would continue to use what is installed with Prinergy. Perhaps work with EPMS. So I'm not going to get into specifically the product itself. Subject to say is that would be something that is based on the JDF, the quality of the JDF that we receive from an MIS solution. And the answer is you can import JDF into Preps, and Preps, if it contains stripping parameters, will generate an imposition for you. Now, EPMS specifically, I don't know. It depends on the version, and that's something you want to touch base with offline. That's actually been addressed. That has been addressed since Prep 6.1. We worked very hard with a printer in the UK to work with come-and-go solutions that do contain what we considered even-numbered come-and-go, odd-numbered come-and-go, and turnaround come-and-go solutions. And so those features have been in Prep since Prep 6.1. You do need to work with your typical building of imposition through a come-and-go manner would be to use a fold pattern. However, Preps, again, in respect to the old way of doing come-and-goes that Preps 5 and earlier have, would continue to use them moving forward. So I'm not going to say 100%, but I think we've covered the vast majority of the use cases mentioned in the question. If there's a specific, then that's something that we need to work on offline. There is a utility already. Every version of Preps comes with a utilities folder. In the utilities folder, there are actually 2 utilities specifically for this process. There's a migration utility. That migration utility physically moves your resources, templates, marks, printers, profiles, moves them from A folder of Preps version to B folder of Preps version. But if you're using a Prinergy as your backbone, you don't have to do that. Then the second utility is what we call the Preps template migration utility, and that does convert your Preps V5 templates and earlier into Preps 6 or 7 templates. So yes, those are already built into the system.
And Patrick, if there's no further questions, do we have any comments or? Very good. So thank you all for attending. If you would please participate in the poll. We appreciate that very much. And Patrick, thank you for a great session on Prinergy Workflow 7.
Thank you, and thank you everyone for joining us. I, again, appreciate your time.